So my son was due on a Monday, actually Martin Luther King Day, January 16th. And a couple of days prior, our doctor, the doctor that we wanted to deliver, stated that he would be available Saturday and Sunday that weekend. So my husband and I tried our best to, speed things up a little bit and get the labor going. So we walked, I bounced on a ball for a few hours. It was a pretty deflated ball actually. And as a married couple, we did what married couples do, and I'll just leave it at that. But we did that for the entire weekend, and nothing happened. It wasn't until Monday morning when I woke up and I just felt like a few contractions. They were sporadic, probably within a 30-minute time frame. I had 3, so 10 minutes apart, but after that they stopped. So when I went to go use the restroom and I noticed, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little graphic here, and this is a birthing story, so if you're squeamish, you might want to fast forward. But I noticed some bloody show, and with my daughter, after that happened, my water broke immediately. This time around, nothing else happened. So, I monitored my body for a couple of hours after that, just listening and just, feeling myself out a little bit to see whether or not, it was something of concern. So when I told my husband after he woke up, he stated that we should call the doctor. Now we already had our bags packed, everything was in the car. My daughter was with my mother for that week because we didn't want to juggle a toddler and a woman who's about to go into labor at the same time. We just thought it would be best for her to stay with my mom, so she did. And so on our way out the doors when I called my doctor's office, and they stated to me not to go to the office but to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and once I got there, they checked me into a triage observation room so they could monitor me for a couple of hours. Now during these couple of hours, I did have some sporadic contractions here and there, but nothing too serious. So unfortunately, being that it was Monday and the doctor that we knew that was going to deliver was not available, we had a new doctor that was available that I and my husband have never met. So it made me a little nervous, but I was thankful to know that she was an amazing doctor. Thank you so much again, Dr. Tansy. She came in and, she just described to us as to what the process would be. So basically after the observation, since nothing was going on, she could either discharge me and let me go, or she could induce my labor. Now for those who don't know what an induction is or inducing labor is, basically what happens is that they break your water for you, and then they give you a synthetic drug to start the labor, to put you into active labor. Now, a lot of times women experience more pain than others, but this is why they accompany it a lot of times with an epidural so that you don't feel as much pain. So I was very honest with her, I was very candid. I am not one of those people who likes to take medication unnecessarily. I'm not necessarily holistic, but I grew up in a household where medication was the last resort. You try herbs, you pray, and then you go for the medication. So I was not in the mind frame of an induction whatsoever. The way that I saw it is that it's his due date. I already have some bloody show going on. I'm not gonna be pregnant next week. I probably won't be pregnant tomorrow. I'm feeling the contractions. Therefore, I'm not going to speed up what's already in the process of happening. So I stated to her, I said, I am not going to receive or allow any medical intervention. I do plan on having this baby naturally. And then I went further on to explain to her that I had my daughter naturally and she came within an hour. So by stating those facts, she was able to determine, you know what, let's not let you go home, especially because it's your second child. And they state that the second child usually comes about half the time from your first. So if it took an hour for my daughter to get here, 30 minutes, my son would be here. And that's how quickly, my labor would progress. So she was wise enough to order an ultrasound just to make sure that the blood had nothing to do with like the placenta, to see if the placenta detached or anything like that, because that would cause complications and that would cause a need for medical intervention. So I completely, co-sign on that. Anything to make sure that my baby was okay. So when the ultrasound tech came in, she was very, very, very nice. She was super understanding. She stated to me that if I felt a contraction, that she would stop. It wasn't an invasive ultrasound or anything like that. It was a topical one on your belly. But during a contraction, it gets pretty intense, that all the touching and the monitors and stuff, tends to be a little annoying. So I appreciated her for saying that. And what should have been a 15-minute ultrasound ended up being a 45-minute ultrasound because I had contractions back to back during the time that she was doing what she was doing. So, you know, when the contractions came, I held my husband's hand, and then I am so thankful that God has created our bodies to have that lull period, because during that time, as a contraction takes place and then it comes down, then there's a time where there's nothing, like you're not feeling any pain, and the intensity is gone. So my contractions, I would say out of a scale from 1 to 10, it was a 5 to 10. I remember my daughter being a 3 to 10, or 3 out of 10. So this labor was definitely more intense in my opinion. Now, I wasn't in an active labor yet. I was just having the contractions and they weren't consistent, but during that ultrasound, they had become consistent. So, you know, after the ultrasound, they called the nurse in, they hooked me back to the monitors. Thankfully, nothing was wrong with the placenta, but they wanted to monitor me for 2 more hours just to make sure that, you know, the contractions were as consistent as we thought that they were, so that they can move me to the labor and delivery room in order to get ready for the birth. So a couple of hours passed, contractions got more intense, and I said it in the last video, but I'm gonna say it again. When you are having contractions, ladies, the way that I get through my contractions, and this may not work for everyone, I am not an expert, but I'm just telling you what works for me through experience. I was a YouTube fanatic, and I Googled as much as I could, and I found this wonderful lady who I cited in my last video, and I'll cite again, who helped me understand more about Hypno Birth. So Hypno Birth is when you take yourself, it's a technique where you take yourself and you put yourself in sort of like a happy place, but more so to focus on your breathing. Back in the day, they used to tell you to do the Lamaze, like, I don't know who brought that up or thought of that, but I'm sorry, that does not work for me. Hypno Birthing worked a whole lot better because it helped me focus not just on my breathing, but on the pain itself. So a lot of times when you have pain, you tend to coil in and you tend to like retract, especially for women who have fierce menstrual cycles. So since the age of 10, I've had really, really, really bad menstrual cramps, and I don't know whether or not that is almost like a practice run for me when it comes to labor and as to why I can tolerate the pain of the natural labor. But I want to say that more than anything, through Hypno Birthing, I realized instead of recoiling when you feel the pain, what you do is that you let the pain roll over you. So it's almost like a wave, and I call it the wave of pain. All my friends laugh at me when I say it, but the fact of the matter is that that's what I do. That's what works for me, and I hope that if you were to try it, it works for you. So with the rolling, the wave of pain, what happens is that you just allow for the contraction to literally roll over you. And as intense as it is, the more you focus on your breathing and breathing in and out of your nose, just like you would when you work out so that you don't pass out, then that's what allows it to be less impactful and less draining than if you were to just not think about it. So I did need to stay focused during those couple of hours that I was in the observation room, and my husband was an amazing and still is an amazing coach, just like he was the last time. He helped me focus on my breathing. He helped me focus on making sure that I didn't panic, because the panicking and the anxiety and the worry and the fear completely will take your mind frame out of what you should be focusing on and throw you into a tizzy or a frenzy that causes the pain to be a lot more, it causes the pain to be a lot worse than what it has to be, in my opinion. So once I got the hang of that, I literally was falling asleep between my contractions. Like a contraction would happen, that lull period would happen, and then I'd fall asleep or, you know, kind of drift off into a sleep until the next one came up. So that's how I go about it. There were times, don't get me wrong, that I wanted to quit. There were times where I heard that little voice that said, hey, this could all be over if you would just get an epidural. And I literally, without anyone speaking to me, it would be probably the most random thing if you were in the room with me, where I would just be sitting there and then all of a sudden I'd, you know, pop up and say things like, I will not. I am strong through Christ who strengthens me, and the joy set before me is that this thing is gonna be over. And it was over. So that's what I use. Sometimes, you know, we have these eloquent confessions and we pull onto scriptures and things like that. In moments like that, sometimes all of that goes away. I know that before I had created a birthing plan for my daughter with my son, I didn't even do that because I knew that at that moment, I wouldn't be thinking about the sense in the room, any type of, you know, ethereal music or anything like that. I wanted to be focused. And when, you know, that moment happened, when the pain and the contraction itself is there, present with you, and you've got that little voice in your head that's saying that you can quit, you don't have to have a natural birth, you can have an epidural. I had to speak against it in confessing what I knew to be true. And although sometimes, you know, I forgot my confession, I still know the word. I still know the truth, and I would just recite the truth at that very moment. And so, you know, I also had a mantra going on to help me with my breathing, where I would just sit there and say, I'm breathing, I'm breathing, I'm breathing. And truthfully, I'm sure a lot of the nurses who walked in and out of that room thought I was crazy, but my husband even signaled them and saying, hey, this is her thing, this is her mantra, this is how she's getting through her pain. So all of that to say, you can do it, I did it, it's doable. After all of that, the doctor came back in after my hours of observation, and she checked me and she was like, hey, you progressed. You got to like 4 or 5 centimeters. You're 80 to 90% effaced at this time. So I feel comfortable enough with your contractions being more consistent to move you on to labor and to delivery. So I got to the room, contractions were consistent. And I think we were just getting registered because I remember the nurse saying, you know, I'm registering you now for labor and delivery. When we're done, then we'll go ahead and move you up to mother baby. Well, she never got to it because within a moment of a contraction, I remember hearing this sound. To me, it sounds like a champagne bottle cork, like popping. So that's what I heard. And then this gush just happened. And I was half asleep and I remember thinking, oh my God, I have completely ruined this bed. My water just broke and it probably is like everywhere. And I looked to the nurse and I looked to my husband and I'm just like, oh, my water broke. So the nurse comes over and I don't know what it is about like my bodily functions taking over, but I remember always being so apologetic and I kept profusely apologizing to this nurse. I was like, I am so sorry that I ruined this bed. I am so sorry. And she's like, honey, it's okay. It's not like it's Egyptian cotton. These beds and these linens are made to be tossed out, like you're good. So once they checked everything, they noticed that the baby was pooping on his way out because my water had broken. This means that, you know, I was going active labor at this point. So they stated to us that they were gonna, you know, grab him as soon as possible, suction out all the bad stuff to make sure none of that stayed in there on his way out. So, you know, my husband has the most amazing story when it comes to how the bed transforms. He has such great sound effects. And so, you know, they transform the bed, the stirrups come out, I start to hear bags and everything, because at this point my eyes are closed and I'm just waiting for the intensity of the urge to push to take place. So as the doctor's talking to me and saying that, you know, when my next contraction comes to start pushing, I get nervous because I don't feel the urge to push like I did with my daughter. Again, a lot of comparison between the first and the second pregnancy, but you can't help it at that moment. You don't know what else to go by. It's almost like your metric. So once that was done, the doctor was telling me it's time to push. I had the oxygen mask on my face to help me with the breathing. I unfortunately bit my husband's hand, and when I say bit, I mean grazed, but to him, I bit his hand. Either way, it was just because of the intensity of the contraction after my water broke that I lost my mind for a second, but he reeled me on back in. We're good. So the doctor is telling me to push, and so I'm pushing, but unfortunately I'm pushing through my throat, and you're supposed to be pushing through your bottom. So there was a lot of this back and forth between me and the doctor, not in a bad way, but she was helping me and coaching me to push properly. And so there'd be a time where I'd push through my bottom and then push through my throat, push through my bottom and then push through my throat. And then finally his head and his shoulder popped out, and they needed for me to push him all the way out because it was a really bad spot for him to be in. And I remember pushing at that moment when I felt a contraction, and I pushed through my throat again. And this nurse who's at the foot of my bed, I remember her looking at me and saying, Francesca, almost like she grabbed me, Francesca, if you don't push through your butt, stop pushing through your throat, do it now. And I just remember thinking, okay, I got this, I can do this. And so So at that point, I pushed through my bottom and I pushed all that I could push out. I promise you, all the energy and focus that I had, I pushed through my bottom and I felt him come out. I thought he was all out. Then the doctor goes and says, hey, you got to push one more time and then we can get him out for you. I caught my second wind. I was not about to allow them to have me push one more time. So after that last push with all my might, that second wind kicked in and I had like a second push within myself and I pushed him all the way out. And that, for the mothers who have been there before, who know, is the greatest feeling in the world. I was just like, thank you, God, I am done. And he was here and I heard him crying and he was loud and he was very, very, you know, just like, mommy, I need to eat, get me out of here, I'm cold, all these things. So, you know, they cleaned him off, they stitched me up and cleaned me off, we did the skin to skin, and it was just beautiful. And so from the time that my water broke to the time that he got here, I didn't realize how quick it was. Everyone kept congratulating me and telling me, you know, you did a great job, oh my God, that was amazing, that was so fast. I figured it was fast, I just didn't know how fast it was. Until I looked at my cell phone and my husband was taking care of the, you know, text messages to the loved ones and the family members and friends and just saying, you know, that he's here, we're happy, we're healthy, you know, wonderful. I looked at the text message that he sent and I saw the time because he said water broke at this time, baby was born at that time. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, that was 17 minutes. Now, from the time that my water broke at home, I waited an hour before I went to the hospital with my daughter. This is my daughter I'm talking about. And at that time, when I got to the hospital to the time that she was born, that was 72 minutes. So I wasn't in labor that long at all. If you want to put it all together after my water had broke, that was a couple of hours with her. With my son, because I had been in observation for like 4 hours out of the day, my active labor wasn't until I got to the labor and delivery room. And I was only there for like 30 minutes before my water broke, and then 17 minutes later, he was born. So that labor was like less than an hour as well. So I've had people tell me that I was just, you know, made to give birth, and I believe that all women are. However, for these short bursts of labor and birthing experiences that I've had, I am so thankful. I really want to just chalk it up to nothing short of God's glory. I'm giving him credit 110% because Lord knows if I had a choice, we as women would literally have a stork drop our baby off at the doorstep. There's no reason as to why we need to go into like a painful anything. You know, I say that my pain levels were like 3 out of 10 and 5 out of 10, but truth be told, if we didn't have to go through pain, if I didn't have to go through pain, I wouldn't choose it. However, I know that with the pain that I endure, again, the joy set before me is having my baby, my healthy, beautiful babies in my arms, and I'm willing to go through that 4 more times, truthfully. I'm not an expert. I'm only here sharing what I learned along the way, and so I hope if you have any questions, if you find that this is helpful, you know, leave the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer any questions as best as I can. Again, I'm not an expert, but as best as I can, I will. And then if there's anything else that I didn't cover that you wanted to know, by all means, ask away. I'm pretty open. I try to stay respectful and classy, but I'm pretty open. And I'm here if you need me. Other than that, I just wanted to say thank you once again for being patient with me. There are more videos to come, more topics, more things that I'd like to share with you this year. Anything that I learned by having a boy versus a girl, I'll go ahead and put it on there. It's only been 3 weeks, and there's a lot of things that I've noticed that are different, but I'm having fun. I know that some people say that 2 is 20, like 1 is 1, 2 is 20, but I do not feel that way at all. I think it's fun. My husband is super helpful. I have amazing friends and family who helped me in this short amount of time, and whether it be because of that or because I do have a positive outlook on being a parent, being a mom, and having it all, I believe that you can have it all. it helps a whole lot. And so I'm having a good time, and I will let you know if, you know, I have a tough day. If you want to hear about that, I really don't like to be negative, but there are these tough moments and tough days, and so if that's something that will help someone else, and spinning that around into a positive outlook, then by all means let me know. But other than that, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And I will talk to you guys soon. Talk to you later. Bye.